Hey there! The video that I'm going to show you here is something I actually shot about a month and a half ago, and things have changed subsequently. The project has evolved, so there's a lot more interesting stuff that comes afterwards, and I'll put that in a later video. But I wanted to show you where the things were at the time that this early phase of the project was. Now, the project is basically how do we identify what are the languages that are spoken in Africa? You always hear that there are 2,000 languages spoken in Africa or more. What are those? What is the facts behind that? So what I've done is gone to the sources and tried to figure out exactly what languages are spoken in what countries to a large extent by how many people so that we can know what to do regarding technology and education for those languages down the road. What you'll see here is when I was just setting out on the project with a few data sets, and I've gotten more data sets in, especially from Glottolog, from the Endangered Languages Project, from the Endangered Languages Archive, so that there are a lot more languages actually in the final system. I'll put on screen here a link to whatever the most current version of the data set that you can see is, and you can go and check it out. It might be a finished software product by now, or it might still be data under development. This is an evolving project, and then I will make a subsequent video that really shows the final product and all the things that you can now do with it. But it's all based on what started here in this video, and so I wanted to make sure that you got to see the sausage factory kind of process of what's going into figuring out what languages actually are spoken in Africa. This is important because until now there's been no place that's consolidated all of the different opinions that are out there about what languages there are and that you can use as a resource base that you have confidence in. So I will show you a largely edited down video of the process that I went through early in making these determinations. And then at the end of the video I have just a little bit of pirate news. Hello, hello. I'm on the cusp of finishing a rather large project. I'll discuss this as I go along. Every language that's spoken in every country in Africa. Put it into a grid so we know in each country what languages are spoken and then what languages are spoken in multiple countries. Now, there are a lot of problems with what is a language, what is a dialect, what should be considered within the scope of this project. And to date, there really is no definitive resource. So I've been working to compare a bunch of different lists, put them together, so that we can feel fairly confident that when we name a language, we know what it is, where it's spoken. But there are a lot of languages for which there are not a lot of details. So let's look at what I've been working on. And I should say before I start, I am working with a broken arm, and so doing this is going to be a little bit painful. If you see me wince, sorry. Also, my microphone setup has been a bit botchy, so I'm having something that is working with my setup, but might not necessarily have the best sound quality. So let's see what we've got that I've been able to determine from these sources that I'll show you. That can be countries which have as few as one major language, Eswatini is an example, to Nigeria, which I've been able to count 559 languages. Now that was an epic slog to find those 559 languages. Make sure that we're talking about only unique languages and all the different names that those languages might go by. So I've actually done all the way through Z, but I've not done Tanzania. Tanzania current list has 125. Now, where are these languages coming from? Well, these lists, I started with lists from this place called ens.wiki, so just these languages. And then the Wikipedia category of languages of Africa by country. I did this with all the different countries. Some of the countries are not listed there, so I had to go and work on the Wikipedia page, and then extracted the languages from this list. And so this is why we'll also see that we have Wikipedia links as we go along. So between the ENS wiki and the Wikipedia, we've managed to get down to 125, but these are unedited. There are a bunch of problems. And then I found this great site called ScriptSource, which has all of the languages by country, and these things, which are called ISO 6393 codes. So there's an organization called SIL that is responsible for deciding what is a language. Basically, if SIL decides something is a language, it gives them a 3-letter code, a unique identifier for that language. And these are all of the languages that they've identified for Tanzania, and you can also see all of the alternate names, or many of the alternate names that they know of for that language. So I'll come back here in a second. What I want to do is go to Tanzania, bang those 125 languages into a working sheet, pop over to script source, take their 112 languages and drop them below. And now we're going to have to adjust the conditional formatting. How many rows do we have? 238. B1 to B, call it 250 for... What I've done off video is change some of these conditional formatting rules so that we can more easily do the comparison. I should say that I did some experiments with AI to see if AI could do this task, and ChatGPT, the version 01, most recent version reasoning model, did very well on coming up with something that worked for the first several countries, and then it just started to deteriorate, and it started giving me these horrible answers that just were not the right ones, so I had to go back and figure out how to do this manually, which is fine. So what that conditional formatting has done is anytime there's a duplicate between the two lists that I showed you, it will highlight that in red. And what I'm going to do is, because I know that those are all exactly the same language, this can be a very fast process. So I'm going to do this, and I'll put this on fast forward so you can see it very quickly. But with 125 languages, we know that the top one has the Wikipedia link. The other one has the link to the script source, which is less useful. So we're going to keep the Wikipedia link, and I'll just fly through this on fast forward in the editing process. Okay, so let's just filter out all of the blank spaces. This brings us down to 173 languages. Obviously, with those, there's still going to be some that are the same thing, but we don't yet know. So what we need to do now is find all of the ones that do not have 6393 codes and then determine how they compare to the other languages in the list. And this is where it starts to get pretty uncomfortable. So this has an ISO code, AAS. And what does we know about the language? And we find that the language is extinct. So do we list extinct languages in this list? I think we do, and then we note that it's extinct. We know that we're probably not going to be able to come back and do anything with AI or any other language technology for the ASA language. But at this point, there could be archives. There could be, let's see, could there be archives? What was recorded was... So noting ASA is not going to get us very far, but we'll leave it there. This is Bemba. Bemba is really the language of Zambia, but because Zambia has a border with Tanzania, we're going to assume that the people know what they're talking about. Bena. Bena is a language spoken in the part of Tanzania where I lived for quite some time. And so we're just taking that note about the population size and pasting it there. The area I lived was a big linguistic mix between Bena and Hehe. So this is here we're seeing something called Central Kilimanjaro, or Central Chaga. Chaga is a big language spoken by a lot of people, but we're not getting... So this is where we have to make a decision, because there are actually two ISO codes. One, there's something they're calling Wunjo, and one's for something called Mochi, and we can, in our system, only keep one. We can, in this system, only keep one code and the reference to the Wikipedia page, so that this is called OLD Mochi, which is the one that's spoken in Mochi, which is the center of Central Chaga. So let's just use old. It's also a cute code. I don't like calling it Central Kilimanjaro. Now, I have never heard this called Central Kilimanjaro. I've always heard this language referred to as Chaga, not Kilimanjaro. So this is a sort of thing where I feel like I have to make a decision, but with 2,300 languages in Africa and 125 in Tanzania, who am I really to make the decision? So I'm asking for you to witness how these decisions are being made. This is NYY. And here you can see that popped up in green, so we're going to come back to Central Chaga at some point down the list. Okay, Datuga seems to be both lists. So we'll take that note here, then take the Wikipedia link, pop it there. Okay, Luo. So that is Luo. That is more the language of Kenya. That will probably filter when we compare, when we do the merging of countries later on. Digo. A friend who was from the Digo ethnic group. Zin. The ones that are coming from the that first wiki have the code embedded in them. Okay, Gogo. Gujarati. Now, Gujarati's not Gujarati speakers, but it's not a African, not a Tanzanian language. Ditch that from the list. I am, believe, spoken somewhere in the northwest of the country. Hey is the other language spoken in Malangali, where I live. It's the language that's most commonly associated with the Iringa region. Polo is a Bantu language of DR Congo and formerly in Tanzania. Says there are 16,000 people, so it's still active. Okay, Coma. Okay, now we're going to have to make a decision. These are going to be the same language, but what they're called, how we put them. So all we know is that it's NTK, and that it has 3 names. And Ikoma seems to be the one that it's listed under. Because Ikoma is a language that it's listed under in Wikipedia, we'll think that maybe that people are more likely to have already had a history of looking for it there, so we'll preference that, but keep the other names that appear, including one that was not in the Wikipedia list, Ekikoma. The Eke is the prefix that signals that something is a language in the Ekikoma language. All Bantu languages have a prefix that signals that something is a language, but they can be very different prefixes. So, for instance, you've seen Kiswahili. Ki is the prefix that says it's a language. So every language name in Swahili begins with ki, so they call English Kiingereza and they call French Kifaransa. But in Zulu, for example, Isi is the prefix. So Isi Zulu, but also Isi whatever English is, Isi whatever French is. And you can't possibly know all of the correct prefixes for every language. So commonly we put in the stripped off version without the prefix and acknowledge that the prefix exists, and hopefully we can get that in so that can also be found by search and pay due respect to the people who speak that language for their name for their language without forcing everybody else to know their name for their language to be able to find and refer to their language. Irakwa is a different. There are 4 major language families in East Africa that kind of converge in Tanzania, and Irakwa is one of the ones at that convergence zone. I know very little about it. I was in their area once. It was quite an interesting couple of days. KAM. Kamba is actually a language, a very large language. You can see it's on the list of languages that are spoken by more than 1 million people, 4.7 million speakers, and it was not on the Wikipedia list that I had of languages spoken in Tanzania. So there's a win. Okay. Kigiriama, NYF. I think of Giriama as more of a Kenyan language, but we've got it listed as NYF, and so we'll keep it for now and then see how it compares to how it's listed in Kenya later on when we're merging the countries together. Rwanda is just KIN. Kirundi is RUN, I believe. Konongo Ruila. Okay, so this is confusing because they have 2 different language names with 2 different population numbers. And, okay, what we will do there, that makes it easy. They get 2 different lines. Link, change that over from the script source. And, okay, so the RWL. And we'll see if we have RWL down the list, if that pops up in green. Yes, it does. So that was extra effort. Okay, Kwavi dialect. Here we run into this question of what is a dialect. So here they're saying Kwavi is a dialect of Maasai spoken by the Kwavi people. According to Herskanen, who's a very well-respected scholar from Finland, while somebody else named Badelman confirms that Kwavi and Baraguyu are synonymous, but that's not solving the question of whether it is a distinct language. And here, I'm not sure whether to hit the delete key or not. So we're talking about 30,000 people, but we're also talking about something that learned linguists who know a lot more than I have decided is not distinct from Maasai. So is it as distinct as a British English from American English? In that case, it really it shouldn't be considered in the list that we're compiling here. And I think I'm going to make the executive decision, but with your witnessing it, that Kwavi does not qualify as a language for our purposes. Hopefully somebody who knows more about the Maasai language family will be able to come and correct me if I'm wrong here. This nice thing here is that this is not a fixed list. Okay, Quadza. Extinct, okay. The last speaker died sometime between 1976 and 1999. That's a pretty big range. But we'll keep it. Also, Rambia. There are a lot of languages where there's not a huge distinction between the R and the L. 100,000 people, that's pretty big. And a recognized minority language in Malawi, LAI. Luo. We'll deal with more when we come back to comparing the languages. That's more spoken in Kenya. Maasai. Here I've made the previous note about conflict in estimates of the number of people. And I think, is it MAA? MAS. Makuamito. MGH. Konde. Spoken southern Tanzania near Mozambique. And here it's KDE is the primary thing. And how many speakers? 2.1 million. Do I have it on the list of million plus? So we said MKE. No, we said KDE. Makonde. Makonde, okay. Mamwe Lungu. MGR. Mandamatum. It is a Bantu language. MGS. And that is all we seem to know about it. Oh, and there it is. There, and we've got all of these. Matumba, we've already got the alternate names. Mwanga is a Swahili word for light, but that would have nothing to do with this. MWN. Zambian census found 140,000 speakers. Ethnologue cites a figure of 987. These numbers of speakers, it's not really a census question, so where they're getting these numbers is somewhat iffy. So large languages, the population of speakers you can assume will double, but smaller languages, there are a lot of pressures for the people who speak them not to speak those languages, or to go speaking more widespread regional languages. Maybe they'll go off and work somewhere, or just various other opportunities. And so a lot of the smaller languages are highly endangered, and the numbers might be lower than what we're seeing as the estimates. You don't know, it's hard to tell. Okay, so Mwera. So Mwera, the thing here is that we've got two different codes, one from script source and one coming in from Wikipedia. And the alternate names, oh no, the alternate, Chimwera, Mwela. Yeah, the alternate names don't overlap either. So we're gonna have to do a little research here. Mwera language, not to be confused with the Mwera Nyasa language. So there are two different languages, MWE and again, this is another version of what they're calling Mbamba Bay, and Mbamba Bay is much farther south than the Tanzanian border in Malawi. Ngoni, 311,000 people, and we're talking about Tanzanian Ngoni, so we're XNJ. Nyakusa, so those are the same things, so Nyakusa Ngonde. Do we have Ngonde? Okay, so we're just going to call it Nyakusa. In this list, they're trying to show both, but it's better to have them separately so that it's easier to find in search. Nyamwezi is a very large language, spoken by how many people? It's on the million plus list, 1.5 million people. Nyiha, Nika, Nyiramba. Nyiramba language does not exist. What in the world is Nyiramba? Where are we getting this from? Iramba language. Okay, so that's just another name for it. And that's NIM, and it's got speakers, so 682,000 speakers. It's Nilamba, I say NIM, and we'll probably have it up. Probably a duplicate. Yeah, so we'll filter that out in a bit. Okay, so here's where things get interesting. So this is an obscure language of Tanzania. According to the speakers, people were expelled from Serengeti in the 1950s. The language has not been classified, but there was field notes from a visit in 2014, so it's an active language, just does not have an ISO code. So this is something where we're going to call it uncoded. I'm going to give it UNC for uncoded, and then note in the language name that it's uncoded. We want to respect that these people exist, that they have their language. We also, but we need to indicate that there is not a consensus yet among linguistics researchers, and it's a good place for researchers to think about and find out more about this language that is unknown to the linguistics community. Okay, Kipare, 500,000 people. I have been to the Pare zone, ASA, ASA, also known as ASU. So we'll just put it ASA, and then it's going to go green, and then we'll work that out in a minute. Rangi, 410,000 people lag. LAG. Yeah, it's a duplicate. Okay. Russia. Version of Chaga. It does not have a code, but it's in the updated Guthrie list, which is a more modern attempt to come up with languages that don't have codes. So we are not going to discriminate against it. We're going to call it uncoded. Russia. Oh, Unk for uncoded. Ramandarundi. That is combining two different languages, Kinyarwanda and Kinyurundi, which may or may not be different languages, but they're spoken in Rwanda and Burundi differently accordingly. So they get different names, and it's a whole different question. They are in here separately, so we don't need to worry about together. Sagala and Sagara are going to be the same thing. Sagala, Sagara, there they are. Sagara. Because Wikipedia has it within R, we'll preference the R version, put the L version as an alternate. Samba, Shambhala, same thing, huh? Shambhala. So we'll just take that population note. Samba, just make sure that, yep, it's there. Serengeti Dorobo, those are going to be a Maasai version, right? Obscure Dorobo languages, a few of which were recorded. Okay, so this is, we'll never be able to recover it. We'll never be able to do anything with technology, but we do not want to deny that it existed. So let's just leave it as uncoded. Tonjo, I have not heard of. 24,000 people near the Kenyan border. SOZ. Subi. A minor Bantu language, Lake Victoria. 105,000 people, that makes it minor, huh? XSJ. Sukuma is a major language. 8 million people, and most people who are watching this video will probably never have heard of it. And there's been very little work done on it. Swahili, you have heard of. Okay, now here we have Tanzanian Sign Language. We're going to delete the sign languages not because they're not important languages, but because they're not languages that we can deal with in this particular project. And every country has languages most countries have various sign languages. What we're going to do is work with those in a different project, hopefully at some point. But the list that we're working on today is a list of spoken languages, and sign languages are not among those. Mbuka, I'm sure, is on the list of 1 million plus. Double check. Wikipedia is estimating 7.1 million, whereas ENS Wiki is estimating 1.5 million. Who knows where they got that from? We'll just delete that because there's no sourcing on that. So what is Tumbuka code? TUM. TUM. Almost to the bottom. Guru. 600,000 people. RIM. West Kilimanjaro. That's going to be another version of Chaga. West Chaga. We've got Machame and we've got Rwa. Insert one row above. Call it Chame. Okay, we've already got Machame. How about Rwa? Rwa we also have. So this is just duplication. Yao, I believe Yao is YAO code. 3.7 million speakers. And it's Yao. Yao. Okay, now put the greens together. And I think I'll spare you watching these greens come together because basically now we know all of these things do seem to be confirmed as languages. I'll combine them in the best way that sees fit and maybe come back for some final commentary later. Or on a different day, we'll see. My daughter might pop in and interrupt this project pretty soon. I'm back. Hopefully you had a chance to go get yourself something to drink or something. Didn't miss me too much. Let us now do the final step in this process. What we're going to do is now go back and copy this list over to the country list just for Tanzania. And so back into the country grid, over to Tanzania. Here we had 125 languages before. We're going to blast that out. Go back up, paste this in, and keep in mind that we had, what was it? 2 Mweras, and it was the bottom Mwera. That's the bottom Mwera, which is the Tanzanian Mwera. Delete. cell, and shift up. Okay. So now we have 130 languages spoken in Tanzania. We're pretty comfortable with that list, but of course I am not 100% comfortable, so I really would like to get more input on figuring out how to get that. But we end up with a grand total of unique languages spoken in Africa of 2,307. Wow. Given all the caveats we've talked about, especially the uncoded aspect, and other countries had a lot more uncoded languages than this. So we're calling this Tanzania. All the languages from here on up are Tanzania. And all the languages from here on down are Tanzania. Copy the whole thing and bring it into this other table, which has each language, which has that entire grid pivoted, but as you can see also includes all of the alternate names, the country where each is spoken, and then I'm going to run a script later. I have to work out the script in detail that combines all of the different country names. So every time something is spoken in the same place, as you can see, we've got, if we sort it here, you can see we've got lots and lots of overlaps. So I have to go through all of these, and we see that there are 2,888 lines, 2,887 language names. A few of these I still haven't gotten the right ISO codes. We'll get those. Merge all of these, make sure that the ISO code is referring to the same set of languages in the same order, and then we'll merge them down so that we get, for instance, here, the Wolof is spoken in Gambia, Mauritania, and Senegal. That'll all come together later. This is all about finding out what we know about African languages at this point, what we can do in preparation for digitizing as many languages as possible in the most interesting ways possible, for natural language processing, for artificial intelligence, for preservation of the languages, for teaching them. You saw that there are a lot of languages where there are very few speakers. We want to be able to make sure that we at least capture the knowledge that's embedded in those languages and make it possible for the children in those societies to continue speaking those languages, have resources to learn those languages should they so choose. I hope you've learned new things about the meta picture of African languages. Now that we've figured out that there are over 2,300, we can figure out what to do with them in the technology sphere. Now what you've just seen was a much earlier phase of the development of this resource for determining what the languages are, and then what resources are out there for each particular language. There's a lot more there. There's a link that you can go to and see what the current state of that is. I will make another video that goes into much more detail explaining what all of these other things are that hopefully will be quite interesting as well. But in the meanwhile, I hope this video shows you some of the thought processes that go into determining what languages we will be having in the system for future activities. I also promised you a little bit of pirate news, and that is that last week I got a contact lens that actually covers over the pupil only of this eye. So I can actually take this off now, and the contact lens prevents me from seeing this out of this eye. So it does the same thing that the big eye patch does. So in future videos, you might be seeing me without the eye patch. It depends on lighting and different configurations for the day. But the good news is that the patch or the darkened lens are in certain situations able to give way to more advanced technology. This has been epic. I'm going to edit this down to hopefully a much shorter video and probably chop out a whole bunch of stuff that you didn't really need to know. But hope that you appreciate what's being done here, that you have feedback, that you subscribe to the Pirate Professor channel. That's quite important. And did I say subscribe to this Pirate Professor channel? Yes. Please subscribe to the Pirate Professor channel. Like, share, tell people about it. And we will look forward to seeing you on the next video.